Have you ever bought some camera gear and you feel regretted? I certainly did. I bought quite a few things that I feel it was complete waste of money. But sometimes there are also things that I regretted, but I just regret I didn't buy sooner. Teleprompter is one camera accessory that I really wish I bought it much earlier. So today we are going to talk about teleprompter, how to pick the best teleprompter for you, and also we are going to have a look at the Desview T3, which is the latest teleprompter from Desview. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Rich Wong here. Welcome back to the channel. I have been actively creating videos here on YouTube for about 4 years now, and I've just checked, I have just created over 300 videos. One thing that I really struggle is speaking in front of the camera. It's something that I just always really scared of doing because I'm terrible at speaking. Maybe I can say it's because English is not my first or even my second language. But it probably is just an excuse because I'm just naturally a terrible speaker. I know some content creators, they can just wing it without any preparations. But for me, I have to spend hours and hours writing my scripts first. And when I film it, I have to read it paragraph by paragraph. So that's why a lot of my video, you see my laptop next to me showing some really long scripts. Quite often, it would take me 90 minutes or even up to 2 hours to record one of my video. And then after editing, it is only like 10-15 minutes long. And that's because I have to keep repeating the same thing again and again because I keep saying it incorrectly. And that is until I got a teleprompter, which is basically like a 45-degree mirror that is attached in front of your camera lens, so it will reflect the screen of the smart device you place underneath it. And when I'm filming, I can just read the scripts by looking right into the lens like what I'm doing right now, so it looks natural and I don't have to remember my scripts. And that dramatically cut down my recording time. These days, I spend about maybe an hour on average recording each of my video. The fastest time was even just around 40-45 minutes or so. So compare it to the 90 to 120 minutes that I used to spend, it is significantly faster. And I don't just save time during filming. My editing time also reduced significantly. If my original footage is say 90 minutes long, then I need to spend at least 90 minutes to go through my first cut during editing to find all the bits that I want to keep and just trim out all the takes that I don't need. And if the original footage is now 45 minutes, then I not just save 45 minutes during filming, my editing time is also reduced by at least 45 minutes. So that means I could save 1 hour 30 minutes for each of my video. And it's not just that, because my brain now doesn't have to work really hard trying to memorize what I need to say. I feel I can speak in a more relaxed way as well, so my video quality is also a bit better than before. And that's why I think if anyone wants to create any video contents, I highly recommend it. Especially the price of a teleprompter is really not that expensive these days, and is probably one of the best bang for your buck accessory that I would highly recommend. Okay, now I may get you interested in buying a teleprompter as well. So let's talk about what are the things that you should think about when you are picking your teleprompter and whether the Desview T3 is a good teleprompter or not. And before we start, a quick usual disclaimer. The sample I used in this review was sent to me by Desview free of charge, but they didn't pay me any money, and this is a completely independent review like all the other reviews on this channel. There are many teleprompters in the market, and the price could be as cheap as like around $20 US and up to a few $100 or even more for the more professional units. So it could be a bit hard to choose one. So which one is the one that is most suitable for me? So the first thing to think about is what sort of camera will you be using to do the filming? Usually the cheapest teleprompter is only good for shooting with a smartphone or maybe some small camera, so it wouldn't work with a larger camera. And the bigger and more expensive teleprompter are designed for some really big camera setup, so while some of them may still work with a small camera or even a smartphone, it would be completely overkill. The Desview T3 is designed to work with both the smartphone camera and the normal size mirrors or DSLR cameras. To be honest, I have not really tested Desview T3 with any smartphone, as I usually just use my mirrorless cameras for filming, but it comes with a few foam adapter to fit the smartphone with different camera shapes. And if you want to shoot with a mirrorless camera, it comes with 9 different adapter rings from 49mm to 82mm, so it covers pretty much all the common size lenses. You just need to screw the correct adapter onto your lens filter thread and then slide the Desview T3 onto it, and that's half the setup done. The provided instruction manual make it look really complicated, but the actual installation is quite easy. The next thing you need to do is to mount a smartphone or a tablet onto the base of the teleprompter, so whatever is displayed on the screen of your smart device will be reflected on the glass on the teleprompter, and then you can read it during filming. Some of the smaller teleprompter will only allow you to mount a smartphone, but most teleprompter in the market do allow you to either mount a smartphone or a tablet, and this is the same for the Desview T3. You can install smart device up to 11-inch onto the T3. Because the construction of this Desview T3 teleprompter is pretty much all plastic, when I try to mount my iPad onto it, it feels really quite flimsy, and I was a bit worried that I may break something. But so far it works okay. I haven't break anything after using it for about 2 months. When filming with a teleprompter, usually you put the camera in a close distance because you need to be able to read the text that is reflected on the mirror. So that means people would either use a standard or a wide angle lens. I myself usually film at 24mm focal length with my Panasonic Lumix S5, and actually a lot of the teleprompters in the market can't work with a 24mm lens. You get some really heavy vignetting if you do that. So this is something that you have to be careful when choosing a teleprompter, and a lot of the teleprompter in the market, they actually don't specify what is the widest focal length that they can support. With the Desview T3, the official spec says it supports lenses as wide as 24mm equivalent focal length. So that means if you are filming with a APS-C camera, the widest lens you can use is 16mm, or if you are shooting with a micro four thirds camera, the widest lens you can use is 12mm. But if you know me, quite often I like to do some tests to see if the spec is correct or not, especially if it's a product from a brand that I'm not too familiar with. So this is a test I did with the T3 attached to my Lumix 20-60 lens, shooting in the video mode. There's no cropping, so this is a full frame camera with no cropping. And start from 60mm. There is no vignetting as I expected, and then I start to zoom out and make the focal length wider. At 24mm, no vignetting like the spec suggested, and then it gets interesting because I can actually zoom out all the way to 20mm and I still get no noticeable vignetting at all. So that is great. One thing you need to notice is some teleprompter like this Desview T3 also supports vertical shooting, but if you do that, the widest focal length that it can support would be quite a bit narrower. It is because the shape of the teleprompter glass is usually a wide rectangular shape and it's not a square or a tall rectangular shape. Another thing that I also want to know is, since the way how teleprompter work is, it lets some light pass through it and then it reflects some light, so it will certainly make the image darker, but it's just how much darker. So with this Desview T3, here are two photos I shot. One with the T3 installed and one without it in front of the lens. But both photos were shot with the same camera settings and same lighting. So you can see the photo that I shot with the T3 attached is slightly darker as expected. When I bring the file into Lightroom and play with it, I find the difference is about 0.4 EV darker with the photo that I shot with the T3, so I think it is quite acceptable. Just like if you add a ND filter in front of the lens, some of them would cause a bit of color shift. Some teleprompters would also introduce a bit of color shift. So here are two photos, one shot without the teleprompter and one with the T3 attached to the camera. Both set to the same daylight white balance, and I adjusted the camera exposure slightly to match the brightness, but otherwise everything is exactly the same. Let's compare the color chart in the middle of the photo. As you can see, there is virtually no color shift at all. The colors on the color chart look virtually identical in these two photos. And even if I use the color picker to check the RGB value, the difference is really tiny. It's like around 1% or even less than 1% difference. So it shouldn't really matter at all when you are filming in real life. This is one of the things that I first noticed when I swapped from my previous teleprompter to this Desview T3. As with my previous teleprompter, I need to set a custom white balance instead of just using the daylight white balance, or else the color is shifted noticeably. But with this Desview T3, I can just shoot with the daylight white balance when I'm filming using my daylight balance studio lights. It is quite common for a teleprompter to introduce a bit of extra lens flare, especially when there is a strong light source that is directly in front of the camera. So I did a test and I used my LumeCube LED light and I outputting at the maximum power pointing directly towards the camera, and I put the light on my set-point slider so it is shining the light from different angle. And this is the comparison with and without the Desview T3. Surprisingly, the lens flare appears to be almost the same with and without the Desview T3 attached it. I was expecting quite a bit more ghosting, but I don't really see that in this test footage. If I pause the video and compare, I do see there is slightly more lens flare where the light source is, but the difference is really quite minor. However, while I can say it passed my comparison test, it doesn't mean the Desview T3 doesn't introduce any lens flare. Let's look at these two images that I used for my brightness test. If you look at the bottom left, the photo that I shot with the T3 attached it has a brighter spot there, and that is caused by lens flare. So while I think the Desview T3 has really good lens flare control, you should still pay attention to your lighting setup if you want to avoid any additional lens flare. One last thing I want to check is if it affects the image sharpness. So again, two photos, one with and one without the Desview T3. Zoom in the photo and compare, I don't really see any noticeable difference. Now, we are looking at the 24 megapixel photo capture using my Panasonic Lumix S5, and we are zooming it at 200%. So I think it's fair to say if you are filming video even at 4K resolution, which is only 8 megapixel, you probably wouldn't see any degradation in terms of sharpness. Okay, there are a few more things that I want to mention about this Desview T3 teleprompter. First thing, the teleprompter is made of plastic. Nice quality plastic, but it is completely made of plastic. The plastic construction make it feel a bit flimsy, but the good thing is it is really lightweight. The weight of this teleprompter is only around 400 grams. There are two cold shoe mounts at the top of the T3, so you could attach some camera accessories to it. But because of the plastic construction and also the way how the teleprompter is attached to the camera is by just sliding it onto the lens, I really wouldn't recommend you put any heavy accessory to it. A small LED light or shotgun mic is probably okay, but I wouldn't mount my external monitor onto one of those cold shoe mount. And another reason why I wouldn't want to install a heavy accessory onto the cold shoe mount is the two cold shoe mounts are located on each side of the teleprompter, and if you are shooting with a mirrorless camera, the teleprompter is attached to the camera lens using the adapter ring. So it is attached very securely, but it does not lock the rotation angle. So if you put heavy accessory on one side of the teleprompter, it may start tilt the whole teleprompter. There is a free app from Desview for you to display your scripts on your smart device. It is available on both iOS and Android store. There's also a remote control that comes with this teleprompter as well. It's like a small game controller with a control stick or control pad with a few buttons. So you could use it with the app to control how the script is displayed on the screen. You can scroll up, scroll down, pause, start the playback, and a few other features. So it is a very handy accessories to use with the app. The app itself is average quality. However, the good news is, if you don't like the app that Desview provide, you can just use any other teleprompter app that is available, and there are many other available on either the iOS or the Android. So all of them are free as well, and they will work perfectly fine with the Desview T3, and also works perfectly fine with the remote that comes with the T3. So yeah, try a few different apps and see which one is the one that you like the most. I hope this video helped you understand a bit more about teleprompter and how to choose one for yourself. And for this Desview T3 teleprompter, I think overall it is a pretty decent product. While I think the build quality could be a little bit better and not so plasticky, especially the holder for the smart device at the bottom feels really quite flimsy. But then I didn't have any real problem even after using it for about 2 months. I like how it allows me to use wide angle lens, even 20mm focal length is okay, and there seems to be very minimal image degradation, so that is excellent. For the price that is around $120, it is really not bad. If you are a video content creator and never used a teleprompter before, then I definitely highly recommend you to get one for yourself, and this Desview T3 could be one of the best options around this price point.